Welcome to this deep dive into ITIF. That's the IT audit framework from ISACA.
Right. It's really the cornerstone for professional IT audit practices.
Yeah.
Think standards, definitions, guidance, all that good stuff.
Exactly. Helps ensure quality and assurance in the field. And today we're sort of acting as your guides, aren't we?
We are. We're navigating what you could call the essential reference sections, Appendices A, B, and C.
Okay, so these aren't the main standards themselves.
No, not the core rules, but they are absolutely key to unlocking a much deeper and more practical understanding of those rules.
Got it, like the back of a textbook, maybe? The parts with the glossary and index that actually help you use the main content.
That's a great way to put it. They help everything click.
So what are we looking at specifically? Appendix A?
Appendix A details the links between each ITF standard, general performance reporting and the guidelines that go with it.
Okay, standard to guideline. And B?
B flips it. It shows you which standards are related to a specific guideline, looking from the other direction.
Guideline back to standards. Makes sense. And C?
Appendix C, that's your glossary, crucial, defines all the key terms you'll find throughout ITF.
Right. So our goal today is really to get you comfortable using these appendices. By the end, you should see them as, well, essential tools for navigating ITF.
Absolutely. Not just add-ons, but integral parts.
Okay, let's jump into Appendix A then. Related standards and guidelines per standard. What's the main takeaway here?
Well, its core job is to clearly map a standard to the guideline that gives you the practical details.
Ah, so the standard is the what, the rule.
Exactly. And the guideline is more the how, the recommended actions, things to consider.
Yeah.
Appendix A puts them side by side.
So if you're reading a standard, maybe General Standard 1001, and thinking, okay, I get the principle, but what does this actually look like?
Appendix A is your direct link.
Yeah.
For 1001, the Audit Charter Standard.
Yeah.
Appendix A lists Guideline 2001, also called Audit Charter, as directly related.
Okay, so it immediately points you to the how-to details in Guideline 2001.
Precisely. It takes the guesswork out. Saves you hunting around for the relevant guidance.
That's efficient. Any other examples that show this connection clearly?
Sure. Look at reporting. Standard 1401, reporting. Yeah. Appendix A points you straight to Guideline 2401, reporting. Same for 1402. Follow-up activities, it links to Guideline 2402, follow-up activities.
Right, standard sets the goal, guideline gives the process. Okay, now I remember seeing something a bit interesting about those reporting standards in Appendix A. It wasn't just a one-to-one link.
That's where it gets quite insightful, actually. Appendix A also shows how some guidelines connect back to standards you might not expect.
How so?
Well, take Guideline 2401, reporting. We know it relates to Standard 1401.
Right.
But Appendix A also shows it relates back to Standard 1207.
1207, it's irregularities and illegal acts, isn't it? A performance standard.
Exactly. Right. And the same is true for Guideline 2402, follow-up activities. It also links back to Standard 1207.
Ah, okay. So the guidelines on how to report and follow up aren't just for the general reporting standards. They also give specific guidance when you're dealing with findings under the irregularity standard.
Precisely. It shows the framework isn't strictly siloed. Practices are interwoven. How you report on irregularities is critical, and Appendix A makes that link explicit.
That seems like a small detail, but it could be really important. If you're auditing something related to fraud, maybe, knowing those reporting guidelines specifically apply. That's key.
It is. Appendix A helps you see those vital interconnections.
Okay, so Appendix A, standard to practical guideline, plus uncovering some of those important cross-links. Got it. Let's move to Appendix B then. Related standards per guideline.
Right, so this flips the perspective, as we said.
Instead of standard first, we start with the guideline.
Exactly. You start with a specific guideline, and Appendix B shows you which foundational standards it supports or elaborates on.
So if A is drilling down to the how.
B is kind of zooming out. It helps you see the why behind the guideline, the core principles it's built on.
Okay, give us an example. How does B illuminate that?
Let's stick with Guideline 2001, Audit Charter. Look that up in Appendix B.
And it shows.
It lists Standard 1001 Audit Charter, naturally, but also Standard 1002 Organizational Independence and 1003 Auditor Objectivity.
Okay. That adds context. The guideline on the charter isn't just about the document itself.
Right. It's fundamentally tied to making sure the audit function is independent. That's 1002.
And that the auditors maintain objectivity 1003.
Yes. Appendix B shows you the bedrock standards that the guideline helps bring to life, practically speaking.
It reveals the foundations. Makes sense. Any other good examples from B?
Sure. Guideline 2002, Organizational Independence. Appendix B links it back to Standard 1001, Audit Charter, and Standard 1002 itself, reinforces how the Charter supports independence.
Okay.
Or think about planning. Guideline 2203, engagement planning.
Yeah.
Appendix B connects it to Standard 1201, risk assessment and planning 1203, engagement planning and 1204, performance and supervision.
Which makes total sense. Planning has to consider risk, the planning process itself, and how the work will get done and supervised.
Exactly. It shows how planning integrates those core standard requirements.
One more maybe, just to cement it.
Okay, Guideline 2204, performance and supervision. Appendix B links it to quite a few standards.
What?
25 due professional care, 1006 proficiency, 1203 engagement planning, 1204 itself, 1205 evidence, and even 1401 reporting.
Wow, okay. That really shows how doing the audit work and supervising it touches on competence, care, planning, evidence, and even how you report it later.
It lays out all those crucial dependencies very clearly.
So Appendix B is invaluable for understanding the why, the foundational standards supporting a specific guideline. Okay, that brings us to the foundation of foundations, maybe. Appendix C, terms and definitions.
Absolutely critical, yes. Appendix C provides the common language.
Why is that so vital in something like ITF?
Well, in a technical field like IT audit, precision matters a lot if people interpret terms differently.
Then the standards and guidelines could be applied inconsistently.
Exactly. It undermines the whole point. Appendix C ensures everyone's working from the same dictionary, the same playbook. It guarantees clarity.
The bedrock of clear communication. Okay, let's look at some examples. What are some key terms defined in C and why are they important?
Let's start with appropriate evidence. Appendix C defines it as the measure of the quality of the evidence.
Quality, not just quantity. That's fundamental in auditing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Is the evidence relevant? Is it reliable? Is there enough of it to back up your conclusion? That's what appropriate means here.
Makes sense. What's another big one?
Audit risk. Defined as the risk that IS audit professionals' conclusions may be different from the true conclusion had all details been known.
The risk of getting it wrong, basically.
Essentially, yes. And crucially, Appendix C breaks down as three parts: control risk, detection risk, and inherent risk.
Understanding those components is vital for planning, right?
Absolutely. It frames how you think about potential errors and where they might come from.
Okay. What about the end result? The opinion.
Auditor's opinion. Appendix C calls it a formal statement, describing the scope, procedures, and crucially, whether or not the findings support that the audit criteria have been met.
And it lists the types.
Yes. Unqualified, qualified, adverse. Defining these ensures everyone understands the weight and meaning of the final audit conclusion.
Vital for stakeholders. Okay,
Right.
let's quickly touch on those risk components again. Control risk.
That's the risk that a material error exists that would not be prevented or detected on a timely basis by the system of internal controls. It's about the client's controls failing.
Okay. And detection risk.
That's the auditor's side. The risk that the IS audit, professional substantive procedures, will not detect an error that could be material. Basically, the risk your tests miss something important.
An inherent risk. You said that's explained under audit risk.
Right. It's the underlying riskiness of an area before you even consider controls. Some things are just naturally more prone to error. Understanding all three helps tailor the audit.
Control risk system fails. Detection risk auditor misses. Inherent risk, it's just risky to begin with. Got it. Any other terms we should definitely highlight from C?
Criteria is foundational, defined as the standards and benchmarks against which an IS auditor evaluates the subject matter. No criteria, no objective audit.
Right. What are you measuring against? What else?
Follow-up activity. Important for closing the loop. It's the activity that determines whether management has taken appropriate corrective actions.
Making sure fixes actually happen. Good one. What about things that could go wrong with the audit itself?
That brings us to impairment, defined as a condition that causes a weakness or diminished ability to execute audit objective.
Like conflicts of interest or not having enough resources.
Exactly. Appendix C lists those examples. Recognizing impairments is key to maintaining objectivity.
And irregularity.
That's a violation of an established management policy or regulatory requirement. Importantly, it notes this includes things like deliberate misstatements, gross negligence, or even unintentional illegal acts. It's broad.
Covers a lot of ground. Okay, what about when we find something? How do we classify it?
That's where material weakness and significant deficiency come in. A material weakness is serious, a deficiency, such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement will not be prevented or detected.
Okay, that's the big one. And significant deficiency.
Less severe, but still important, a deficiency. less severe than a material weakness, yet important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance.
Understanding that distinction is key for reporting, I imagine.
Critical. And related to both is materiality itself, an auditing concept regarding the importance of an item with regard to its impact, what actually matters.
Right, what rises to the level of needing attention. Okay, last area, the auditor's mindset.
Appendix C defines both objective in appearance and objective of mind.
Appearance versus reality.
Sort of. Objective in appearance is about avoiding situations where a third party might think your objectivity is compromised.
But perception matters.
Right. And objective of mind is the actual state of mind making conclusions without bias, without influences compromising your judgment.
Need both for credibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These definitions really underscore the professional standards expected.
That's a great selection. It really shows how Appendix C isn't just a list, it's the vocabulary standard for the entire framework. So anytime you hit a term in ITF you're unsure about.
Appendix C is your first port of call, your authoritative source.
Yeah.
It ensures everyone speaks the same language.
The bedrock, like you said. Okay, well, that wraps up our deep dive into ITF Appendices A, B, and C. Let's just quickly recap.
Sounds good.
Appendix A shows the link from a standard to its practical guideline, helps you find the how-to.
Right. Appendix B does the reverse, links a guideline back to the foundational standards it supports, gives you the why and the context.
And Appendix C provides those crucial definitions, ensures everyone understands the terms consistently.
Exactly. They're indispensable tools. If you're working with IC, get familiar with them. Use them actively when you read the standards or guidelines.
Because using them will definitely sharpen your understanding and how you apply the framework.
Definitely. It leads to more informed insights, better audits, better assurance.
So we'll leave you with this thought to consider. How might a clearer grasp of IT audit terms and the connections between standards and guidelines empower you? How could it make your work, or just your understanding of IT governance, more effective and confident?